Okay, so Be'ezras Hashem, we are continuing today with our shirim on the Mitteler Rebbe Shaar HaYichud, and we're moving through the stages of contemplation, explaining what Chachma and Bina are, and all of this is ultimately a setup so that we can properly understand how the avodah of hisbonenus, of contemplation and meditation, in accordance with its three valences, the depth, the width, and the length, how that Bina draws down the lights of Chachma, but how ultimately the lights of Chachma and the lights of Bina are meant to be expressed in our own experiences, down here within the individual themselves. And so when speaking about Chachma and Bina in their isolation, a person can fall into the trap of thinking that the avodah of the moichin, that contemplation, that intellectualization, are something separate and apart from the application and the drawing down of that contemplated wisdom into the lived experiences of the midos, the diburim, and the maisim. And so when we look at Chochmah and Bina, and we understand that there's an oimek within Bina that gives us access to the oimek within Chochmah, and that even though Chochmah in its wholeness and Bina in its fragmentation and particularization are unified, nevertheless, it doesn't become apparent to us yet, based on Os Aleph in the Shaar HaYichud, how this goes to the next level where we can begin to actually apply these insights. Chochmah and Bina, no matter how detailed they are still within the realm of insight. They're still within the realm of intellectualism, in the realm of contemplation by way of transcendental ideals that don't necessarily have the ability yet to be transmitted or to be applied to the lived experience of human emotions and human vicissitudes. And so in Os Beis of Shaar HaYichud, the Mitteler Rebbe is going to come along to explain to us how hidden within Chochmah and Bina, but in particular within Bina itself, there is a secondary, almost intermediary stage that serves as the Memutza HaMechaber. A Memutza HaMechaber is an intermediary level that serves to connect and to bridge the two levels that it's coming to connect. So in order to serve as a bridge between two oppositional levels, in our context, which would be Chachma and Bina, and the applied experience down in our own lived experience of Zer Anpin, and a mamutza is an intermediary that, because it occupies a space, a liminal space that has an aspect that's connected to both edges that it's coming to connect, this middle bridge has the ability of drawing down that which is above towards the territory of that which is below, primarily because it straddles that territory where it's both above and below at once. And in the language of the Arizal, this is referred to as the lower elements of the partsufim of Abba and Ima. Abba and Ima, Chochmah and Bina, represent the ideals. But within Abba and Ima, within Chochmah and Bina, there is already the preparation to draw down the insight and the wisdom from above into the live experience down below. But because there has to be a process in which the wisdom from above goes through a stage of diminution and concealment so that it can be revealed in a palpable and graspable way by that which is below. So the lower elements of Chochmah and Bina, which become the moichin of Zer Anpin, are going to serve as the intermediary level of contemplation, which is not just the pure contemplation of an ideal, but rather the contemplation of an ideal with an eye that is particularly focused on how can I draw more applicable expressions from within this idea and draw it down into actualized reality where it means something. And these two in between partsufim, these two stages that draw down the light of Chachma and Bina into the place of the human being itself, into the place of machshava and emotion, is going to be referred to as Yisrael Saba v'Tevunah. When we look at the breakdown of the partsufim, as the Arizal describes, so you have Atik and Arich, which represent Keser, and then within Chachma you have Abba and Yisrael Saba v'Tevunah. Abba is the Shorish of Chachma, Yisrael Saba is the lowest expression of Chachma, which then allows itself to be expressed in Bina. And then within Bina, you have Bina, but in order for Bina to be conveyed below, it has to also have an intermediary space, which is the space of Tevunah. So Abba and Ima, Chochmah and Bina represent the transcendental ideals of the initial burst of thought, and then the particularization of thought by way of contemplation, but it is still prior to expression in a manageable way that can be grasped within lived experience, within tefillah, within something real. And so what the Mitteler Rebbe is going to discuss now is the nature of Yisrael Saba and Tevunah, which is that intermediary stage that draws Chochmah and Bina into Zer Anpin and Malchus below it, but it has to have this intermediary space, which is still part of the Moichin, part of contemplation, but it's a contemplation that is already priming itself to reveal that contemplation into bite-sized, manageable pieces of understandable and downloadable information. So sagt the Heilige Mitteler Rebbe, V'hine yadua sheyesh bebina atzma beis madregos, bina v'tvuna. So when we look at Bina, when we look at that place of contemplation where the Netzach Hod and Yesod of Bina, the Oirech, the Oimek, and the Roichev of Bina are now being drawn down. So we have to pay attention to the fact that Bina only represents the upper half of the parts of Bina, but there's also a lower level of Bina, which is the level of Tevunah. And what is Tevunah? Why is there a need for this intermediary liminal space that can draw down the light of Bina? Tevunah is like the malchus of Bina. It's the lowest part of Bina that is primed to descend downwards and become the moichin of Zer Anpin. It's that liminal space. V'inyan ha-Tevunah. What is Tevunah? Hu b'chinas hespashtus or habina. What it is the ability to draw the light of Bina downwards, beyond itself, not just to rest in that idealized place of contemplation, but rather to draw those idealized forms of contemplation into real experience. Just like the Zohar Kadosh says that the lower elements of Abba and Ima, of Chachma and Bina, are Yisrael Saba and Tevunah is referred to as Ima Tata, as the lower level of Bina, meaning to say the Malchus of Bina that allows the quintessence of Bina to break the brain-body barrier and to allow it to descend down into the place of the Midos. And Tevunah is the secret of Mitzad. It's the light of Bina. Mitzad Klitas Hetiv Bekli HaMekabel HaHasaga de Bina. That Tevunah is the deep incorporation, the Klita, the receiving, the reception of the idea of Bina in its depth and drawing it down into a real place of receiving it so that it can become part and parcel of my experience. Imkein mispashed ba. And because Tevunah serves the role of drawing down the essential insight of the contemplation of the pure mind of Bina, it draws it down. And by drawing it down, it can bring it into Kama Inyanim Nivdalim Me'etzem HaHasaga. Now that I have a proper understanding of what I need to draw down, I no longer need to be beholden to the original thought as it emerged, to the original idealism of the principled thought in Bina. With Tevunah, I have the ability of drawing it down into Kama and Yanim Nivdalim Me'etzem HaSaga, things that are not necessarily inherently connected to that original thought. V'hu Nikra Ish Tevunah. Someone who has the ability to do that is an Ish Tevunah. An Ish Tevunah is someone who can look at the quintessential drop of Oimek of Bina and draw it down so that it can be applied in a different way. Like the depth of water. Ish Tevunah Yadlena. It is the Ish of Tevunah, an Ish of understanding who has the ability of drawing forth those deep waters. Ish Tevunah Yadlena Mayim Amukim him. Meaning, what are Mayim Amukim? What's the depth of the Mayim Amukim? Him bechinas Amkus Bina. We just saw this in the Ramchal. The Palge Mayim that give shape to Zer Anpin is the depth of Bina, and it has to be drawn down through Tevunah. But these Mayim Amukim are the depth of Bina, which are inaccessible to the levels lower than it. Shenishar Behe'elem Ha'atzmios. It's still contained within the inherent concealment of that which can still be considered essential. If it's essential, it's not revealed. And if it's revealed, it's not essential. And therefore, Bina, no matter how revealed it begins to be, is still caught up within that essential sense which contains it within itself. But it's the Ish Tevunah Dafka, who's Yadlena v'yeshavena min ha'elem lahavia lehispashtus bakama ofanim shonim. But it's specifically Bina that has the ability of drawing out from the depth of the concealment of Bina to bring it out into a place where it is now subject to expression outwards in numerous ways so that it can be grasped. The purpose for the Ish Tevunah is so that they can dig down deep into the depth of the idea which can't be translated by dint of its ascendancy, and to allow it to be drawn down so that those who are receiving from it have the possibility of becoming satisfied from these lofty ideas, like someone who's drawing from the depth of the water in order to bring water to the sheep. And it's exactly what we see in our lived experience, in the sense experience. That when it comes to a svara amuka that Bina is contemplating, its depths are too deep for an individual to properly be able to grasp. That's referred to as mayim amukim. Shehu b'chinas oimek hamusag. That's the depth of Bina. That yes, it's still Bina, but it brings us right into the highest place of Havein b'chachma. Sha'oirech v'haroichev mimenu ba. That oimek hamusag, that pnimius of bina, is the oimek of bina from whence the oirich and the rochev are going to emerge. The ishbal tvuna, but the secret of the person of tvuna, the lower level of bina, dafka yadlena. It's only them who have the ability of drawing it out and drawing it further than itself. Perish, what does that mean? Sheyoitzi laor b'chinas ha'elem ha'oimek hamusag ad sheyachilu hasagas ha'adam ki'ilu lo haya amuk klal. That the goal of the Ish Tevunah is to draw out from the depth of the concealment of that idea that is embedded within the Pnimius of Bina, so that the hasaga of the Adam can reach a place where it's as if there was no depth here whatsoever. Everything is revealed kesimla. Kilu lo haya amuk klal. It wasn't deep at all. Kamol hadola mayim amukim, like somebody who comes and draws forth the depths of the waters, shemakari v'sa'omek, that they bring the depth closer. They're not undoing the fact that there's a profound level of depth here. What they're doing is they're bringing the depth closer. That's what Tevunah is. Tevunah is not undoing the depth of Bina. Tevunah is the translation of the depth of Bina so that it can be received. And therefore we have to say that Tevunah, which is the edge of Bina, is in truth a strength, a power of the mind that extends and juts forth from within the pnimius of Bina itself, in order to bring the depth of Bina towards revelation so that it can be received by those who are below. Masha'ein kain, but without Tevunah, Kishaino ish Tvunos, and all that exists is Bina itself, without the Malchus of Bina, which is Tevunah. Gam shehu bal hasaga b'moyach habina, even though a person has a grasp in the mind of Bina, shenikra tafsan b'lashon ha'olen, it means a person can be toife something. Yachol hiyo shahasagaso nisheres rak kamoishehi be'etzem moyach habina shalosh shenikra ruach binaso levad v'lo yavu mimenu shum hispashtus lamata be'inin nivdel shechutzpo shechutz min etzem hasaga klal. Without Tevunah, what would happen is that a person might have a grasp of something oriented towards Bina, but that Hasaga will remain stuck within consciousness and its concealment, and it will never descend down into a real place of application. Yes, a person might have a Ruach of Bina. Yes, a person might have the depth of Bina, but they will not have the ability to bring it forth from within itself, any level of extension downwards, in any new applied ways. If I have Tevunah, I can grab that idea of Bina and I can apply it to different areas in my life, relationships, experiences, inner processing, outer processing. But if I don't have that Tevunah to bring it down and apply it in differentiated states, so then a person is stuck with the Etzem Mayach Bina, which is, it's a hasaga, it's a grasping of something, but it's still beyond grasp. And even though we said that Bina before has an oimek, a roichev, and an oirech, and theoretically that should take care of the job of needing to draw down the light of Bina, nevertheless, says the Mitteler Rebbe, no, that's within Bina itself. That's the shlosha elements within Bina itself, but there's a malchus of Bina, which is Tevunah, and that brings it down an even further level. The depth orientation, the width orientation, and the length orientation ascribed to Bina as well as Chachma are all taking shape within the closed economy of Bina itself. It has not yet expressed itself outwards. Yes, it's certainly the burgeoning potency of thought, the buzzing nature of the mind as it's sparking itself to kind of awaken itself to a process of understanding. But the movement within the mind is not identifiable with the translation of that which takes place within the mind downwards to a place beyond the mind itself. And that's what the importance of Tevunah is. The importance of Tevunah is that it has the ability to draw it forth. Even though Bina has an oirech, an oimek, and a roichev, that's still within the essential nature of Bina. But not yet that it should be revealed downwards as something separate and apart, as an applied science, as something that is confident in the source that it comes from, yet able to express itself in its own idiom. That's the secret of Tevunah. Nevertheless, those three gradations, not to mention Oimek, Avada Oimek remains concealed within Bina, but even the Oirech and the Rochev that are burgeoning from within Bina, that's all contained within the Etzem HaHasaga itself, as it exists in its place, but it is not descending down beyond its place yet. The Dugma L'Cholzeh, what's a good example for all of this? Hine Anuroyim, what we see is Ba'omek HaPilpul B'Talmud V'Tamei HaSvaros Rabos, when a person is engaged deeply in the Pilpul of the Sugya, and there's many, many different Havanos, Kach v'Kach. Gam shebayim b'hasaga de Bina, And even though a person is contemplating these notions in their mind of Bina, but we can't paskin based on that contemplation mode. It still has not yet revealed itself to be something that can be revealed downwards. Apiza hasechel. Ki adayin ein hasechel v'asvara rak haskala sichlios levad bilti yimsa mimenu shum hispashtus behetius le'inyan nivdal himenu shu lechayev al yada or lezachas al yada. So Zok the Heilige Mitteler Rebbe, the notion of a bina without a tevunah is like the depth of pilpul in the Talmud with all of the different reasons back and forth, why it should be yes, why it should be no, memtes panim tamor, memtes panim tahor. But nevertheless, it doesn't contain within itself any real svara as to how to actually take this idea and apply it on a positive level, or take this idea and apply it as the negation of something else. It's still just a pure idea. It's the haskala sichlius levad, built the yimsa mimenu shumis pashtus. There's not yet the possibility of finding any real extension from within it with the movement from one idea to other ideas that are separate from it, which is there in order to really apply the wisdom, to apply whether this is something chayav, whether this is something zakai. That's the koyach of tvina. But bina without tvuna is just idealized thought prior to expression. A good example of this is like something that has been formed in its heilig state. The potential towards expression is there. The potential has been formed, but nevertheless, it's unclear as to what exactly is going to happen to this thing and what is going to come out of this thing and what to do with this thing. That's the koyach of Tevunah. It's what to do with this. How do I deal with this now? But the mind of Tevunah, the edge of Bina, which is the transference where the inside of Bina breaks the brain-body barrier and descends down into the heart and the midos, that's the ability to be mispashet mimoyach habina. It's the extension of the moyach habina downwards. The secret of Tevunah is how to apply in a real way across the boundaries of Tevunah. Tevunah also has an oirich oimek and a roichev, as Rafil Paracher points out. But nevertheless, at that stage, it's already being applied. How do I think about this? Not just to read it in the book, but how do I think about it? How do I contemplate it? How do I daven with this? What are the different ways I can apply this wisdom? How does this help me when I'm waiting in line at the grocery store? How does this help me when I'm frustrated with somebody in my life? That's the question of Tevunah. That's the ish Tevunos. And now the Mitteler Rebbe is going to ask an important question. So we see that Tevunah, this lip of Bina that allows the contemplation of the purity of the mind to express itself beyond its limit so that it can become something thematizable in reality. So the Mitteler Rebbe is asking a question. He's saying, we understand that every partzuf, Bina, for example, has 10 spheros. And every partzuf is made up of Gimel Rishon and Zayin Tachtonim, the upper three heads of consciousness, Chochmah Bina Das, and the lower Zayin elements, the lower 7 elements of Chesed, Gvura, Tveres, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, and Malchus. Now we know that Netzach, Hod, Yesod, and Malchus are already those that are primed to extend themselves downwards. So isn't Bina already containing within itself the Zayin Tachtonim of Bina, the lower quadrant of Bina? And isn't the lower quadrant of Bina the thing that's meant to be expressive of the idealism of Bina downwards? So why do we need to come on to Tevunah then? Why do we need something separate? Now, be'emes, as the Mitteler Rebbe is going to say, and as Rafil Paracher says, Tevunah is ultimately the Zayin Tachtonim of Bina, but as they express themselves in Malchus, Tevunah is the Malchus of Bina. The Zayin Tachtonim are the expressions of Bina downwards, but they're still prior to actualization. Tevunah is the Malchus of Tevunah, which is one of the most significant places in the Seder Shtalshalos because it has this radical secret of being the lip, that liminal place where the infinite expresses itself into the finite. And so Zok the Heilige Mitteler Rebbe. Ach l'chayra anu roim sheyesh bebina atzma b'chinas midos hanekra Zayin Tachtonim debina v'nekra midos shebeseichel hamata klape schus seichel mate klape choiv ki yadua. But we see within Bina itself that there's the notion of the Zayin Tachtonim of Bina, which are the midos within the mind itself that have the ability to tend themselves towards an opinion, whether the person is guilty, whether the person is chayev, or how to engage in it. So nevertheless, you're right, says the Mitteler Rebbe. Obviously, there are midos within the seichel. And within the midos, there's the potential towards moving towards the chesed in it? Do I want to think about this in a positive way? Do I want to apply this in a negative way? Do I want to use this in a sense of constriction or expansion? How to reveal it? Where to reveal it? But all of that is still within the seichel itself. Those are the midos, but it's specifically the ish Tevunah, dafka, Tevunah, which is the malchus of bina, that's going to have the ability to be moitzi la'or min hamidos shebabina. Avada, there's midos in the bina, but the malchus of bina is Tevunah, and only with the malchus of bina, which is Tevunah, do we have the ability of the lowest level of the moichin to extend itself downwards to become the upper level of the midos. The ish Tevunos, meaning the person with Tevunah, hainu koyach hakoylet b'chitoiv le'etzem ha'asaga, im kein mispashet ha'asaga bo la'asos lahorot bo kama inyanim nivdalim legamrei v'gam b'yachalto lahavi es oimek bina lidagilo kenizka la'el v'day l'meva. And it's specifically the ish Tevunah that has the ability of drawing out the midos of bina, the zayin tachtonim of bina, which is the potential towards the actualization and the specificity of thought prior to its actual emergence outwards. And it's the Tevunah itself, which is the koyach of receiving that innermost point of bina in such a deep way and grabbing the etzem hahasaga that it can then decide how to express it and how to share it and how to reveal it and what measure in which to reveal it and what measure in which to conceal it. And with this goal, with this koyach of the malchus of bina, which is the secret of Tevunah, not only does it have the ability to redistribute the energy in the proper way, but it also has the ability of going all the way up and beholding the ikr nekuda of malchus, of bina itself. This is the secret of Tevunah. Let's go weiter. V'hainu in parentheses says the Mitteler Rebbe, b'china of Abba ve'ima tatayin, which are Yisrael Saba and Tevunah. Right, we said that Chachma has the Yisrael Saba, which reveals it, and Bina has a Tevunah. So Zok the Heilige Mitteler Rebbe, the Yisrael Saba is the midos of Chachma, and Tevunah is the midos of Bina. Ach boyin bebechinas giloi lechutz bebechinas malchus de Tevunah hu haseichel haba b'machshava hanikra oisiyos machshavas haseichel sha'aseichel mislabish ba hu bechinas kli chitzoni lemachshava iyunit v'hu giloi ha'asaga de bina atzma mitzad etzem haseichel v'hasvara bechinas malchus de Tevunah nimshach shorish oisiyos lemachshava atzma m'shenikra leia v'chulei v'hu adal l'rabasi de'echad. So the Mitteler Rebbe is explaining something very important here. So we just saw that there's midos in Chachma, there's midos in Bina, there's Yisrael Saba and Tevunah, and it's Tevunah itself, which is going to be the ability to take all of that intellect, all of that thinking that still remains stuck within the place of thinking, and how to apply it downwards. And the Mitteler Rebbe is explaining this Ba'oisios HaKabbalah now. That what does it mean that there's Yisrael Saba and Tevunah? Yisrael Saba is the midos of Chachma. It's the ability of Chachma to descend downwards, to express itself within the Malchus of Chachma, which then connects itself to Bina, and then Bina itself forms, and the Tevunah are the midos of Bina. But the Malchus of Tevunah are the way that they emerge from internal concealment into external revelation. Achboyin bebechinas hagiloi lechutz ubebechinas malchus de Tevunah. It's malchus of Tevunah, it's Tevunah, that edge of thinking that is in truth going to be the lip, at which point the illuminated light up above is going to be revealed down below. That's the seichel haba b'machshava. That's the mind that now enters into not just modes of contemplation, but into my thinking mind. Tevunah is the active mind. Tevunah is the thoughts that I go through on a day-to-day basis. It's the never-stopping process, of emergence downwards. That's machshava. It's referred to as osios machshavas seichel, the letters of thinking, the beginning of contemplation in a real and applied way. That only comes from the malchus of Tevunah, where I can begin to apply it in accordance with the letters of my mind. Sha'aseichel mislabish ba, the seichel of Chachma and Bina, and the midos of Chachma and the midos of Bina are mislabesh within the machshava of Malchus de Tevunah, which is the osios of the machshava, the language of thought. When I'm thinking in letters, the place of actual hispoinunus, to make it something real. And this is considered the external vessel that allows for the internal contemplative thought to reveal itself, which is the gilui of the hasaga of Bina atzma mitzad etzem haseichel the hasvara, meaning to say that it's the fundamental revelation of the etzem of the innermost nekuda of Bina that descends down into the Malchus of Tevunah, that it can now be revealed in the secret of Tevunah. And it's nimshach shoyresh ha'oisios ha'machshava atzma shenikra leia. And this is the place of Leia. Malchus the Tevunah is the place of Leia. It's the place of contemplation. It's alma de iskasia. It's the beginning of consciousness prior to the expression of consciousness. Because again, the inner process of Chachma and Bina are inner states that are taking place within that infinite realm. And that's not yet a place where we talk about applicability into the place of machshava. But when we talk about Leah, we're talking about the very beginning of thought. We're talking about the edge of Bina, which becomes the Rosh of Zer Anpin. That's the place of Leah. And this Leah is the Dalid de Rabasi de Echad, meaning to say this is the edge of the infinite realm, where the infinite realm begins to express itself down into the realm of division and separation. In pure contemplation, in Chokhmah and Bina, I say, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Echad is Yichud Ilah. Echad is the unity between Chokhmah and Bina. But the Dalid of Echad is elongated. Why is the Dalid of Echad elongated? Because that Dalid contains within itself the secret of the breaking away from the realm of unity and descending down into the realm of disunity and descending down into the realm of actualized thought, which is still contained within the unity of thought in the Echad. The Dalit of Echad is not separate from Echad. It's not yet Baruch Shem Kivon Malchus Lambad. It's not that the applied vision has emerged yet, but it's the potential towards the application of the division of Malchus Debina, which a Malchus Tevunah, which still remains in the realm of Echad, but it's the preparation of that Dalid to descend downwards and express itself downwards. V'zehu shenikra Tevunah ben v'bas. Ben v'bas, the son and the daughter, are osios Tevunah. And the Zohar Kadosh refers to Tevunah as the ben and the bas, because Abba and Ima is Chochman Bina, and Tevunah is the thing that allows there to be the emergence of something practical. And Tevunah also has these three gradations. Every state of mind has these three gradations of Oirech, Roichev, and Omek. But it's only here in Tevunah that the Oirech, Roichev, and Omek, that the length, that the width, and the depth are going to be expressed. So what's the Oimek of Bina, of Tevunah? The Oimek of Bina is the Etzem Koyach HaTevunah Hazois, meaning the bare reality of the possibility, the miraculous possibility of having a place in our mind called Leah, which are the Osios of Machshava, that have the ability of taking the depth of contemplation and transcendent ideals into a actual place. The moment I'm aware of what I'm trying to be aware of, prior to actually being aware of how to become aware of that, is the oimek of Tevunah. And that's where the oimek hasaga is, and it has the ability now lavoy lagiloi, to be revealed in the element of ish Tevunah yadlena, because it's being drawn down and drawn forth. And what's the oirech of it? The oirech of it is yiridasa be'inyan acher hanivda lahoiris bo lasois masim rabin. The ability to take this idea down and to apply it into many, many different ways. That's the oirech of Tevunah. But because we're in Tevunah, it's actually taking shape. It's not just in a potential form. And the roichev of Tevunah is the ability to have applied logic across the board, not to be limited in one way of applying it, but rather to have a grand vision even when I'm still functioning within the realm of practicality. And why is Tevunah contained of both the ben and the bas? That there should be masculine and feminine, the son and the daughter. Why should there be both contained? Why is it that it's specifically from within Tevunah itself that there's going to be the emergence of the possibility of real midos being revealed as essential things in and of themselves, that are no longer just trapped in the idealism of thought, but rather can be applied in active forms of meditation and tefillah and contemplation? Because Bina itself, no matter how compartmentalized it is in its interiority, when we look at it as the place of Oirech, Roichev, and Oimek, nevertheless, that's only vis-a-vis itself, but vis-a-vis that which descends downwards from it, Bina is still considered in the Gar. It's still considered something completely removed from our ability to grasp, and there would have been no real transformation of that contemplation and the thoughts and understanding of contemplation and drawing it down into actualized midos and maisim without the Tevunah itself. And like when we say that Bina is the shorish of dinim, it's not that the dinim are there, it's that the potential of dinim are there, and they're yet to be revealed. They're only revealed much later on. They're revealed much later on. There would not have been the emergence of midos from within Bina itself. Even though Bina itself is called Eim Habanim, and the implication is that it has the emergent principle of the Zayin Tachtonim, or Ima Ilah, which implies that it's the ascendant mother and that it's going to give birth to the midos. It's nothing. It doesn't have any translational ability without the Malchus of Tevunah, which is the Oisias Machshava, the Makom of Leah, the Dalit of Echad, which is the burgeoning potential of possibility that is still remaining within the realm of infinitude and unity, but now it's going to go and down and express itself in practicality. Mashein ken HaTevunah. Tevunah is not referred to as Imilah, it's referred to as Imatata. Lohailid hamidos, to actually give birth to the midos, and those midos are the ben and the bas. Ahava and yira, love and fear, real application of chesed and gvura. Which way am I going to go? Am I going to be a Talmud of Beis Hillel? Am I going to be a Talmud of Beis Shammai, as the Admar HaZaken explains in Igros Kodesh? Shabayim beis klalus betevuna. All of the ideas, av and yira, the midos, they emerge unified within the place of tevuna, which is the element of the hispashtus of the or of bina lamata. Keniz kala'el, like we said already. V'gam lazeh hatam b'chinas hamoichin shebemidos nimshach mebechinas hatvuna. So we're seeing tevuna as the malchus of the seichel, but because it's the malchus of the seichel, the lowest part of that which can't be revealed, it's armed with this unique ability to contain the tamsits of what was being revealed above, but also to be transformed down below. And as a result of it being the lowest level of the higher level, the malchus of Tevunah, it also has the ability of being the moichin in the lowest level, as we know, that it's havein bechachma v'chacham bebina. That if Tevunah is the finalization of the potential towards application within the non-applicable world of unity, then it also becomes the highest level of applicability within the world of applicability. And so Bina has this malchus of Tevunah, which is the lowest part of the moichin, and it becomes the crown of the midos themselves. Like the pasuk says, Hashem b'chochma yasad aretz, the abi yasad brata, choinin shemayim b'tevuna, shemayim him b'chinas hamidos, eishumayim ki yadua, v'cheinu b'tevuna yisboinin shu b'chinas kiyam hamidos b'chinas hamoichin de tevuna. The Mitteler Rebbe is bringing a raya that we typically see the relationship between Chachma and Malchus and Bina and Zer Anpin, because Bina is the place that the Moichin are going to come down from. But then why does the pasuk say B'Chachma Yasad Aretz Koinin Shemayim B'Tevuna? Shemayim is Zer Anpin, Shemayim is Eishin Mayim, Shemayim is Chesed and Gevura, Shemayim is actually applying something. So why not say that comes from Bina? Because it doesn't. It doesn't come from Bina. It comes from Tevuna, which is the Malchus of Bina, and it's only Tevuna that has the ability of breaking free that barrier and extending itself downwards. It's the bechina of the midos of Eish and Mayim. And Tevunah is the place of the contemplation as to how to actually apply the midos. Tevunah is where I'm living in the real experience of how do I take this idea and apply it to something. Chesed, Gvura, in this relationship, in that relationship, in this moment of Tefillah. It's only with Tevunah. So Tevunah is kind of like the last stop along the chain of being in the Seder Ashtalshalos of the Moichin, and it's the first stop along the way of the emergence of the Moichin into the midos themselves. Because Tevunah is like an intermediary level that serves to combine two opposites. To draw down the potential of separation that exists within Bina that nevertheless still remains inaccessible, and to allow it to transfer down into the midos shebelev. And it becomes the rosh of the lev so that it can be now something accessible. It's the point of transference between the infinite and the finite, which is why it's the most important and most complicated place. Which is ultimately the ability to draw down something new in an applicable way from something that was present but not accessible. V'yadua, and it's known, gam kein sheyesh nun kefufa v'nun pshuta bebina. Lehios nun kefufa hu haroiche v'nun pshuta hu ha'oirech v'nun miloi shelo b'nun pshuta ma she'en kein b'shar miloi ha'osios. Ki ha'oirech nichla b'roichev. V'chinu b'tevuna. Amna nun hakafel be'inyan hanikra hisbainenus kamay ami lo hisbanin. Shezeu b'chinas pnimius bina hanikra iyun la'amoid al davar v'chulei shenikra bina shabina hu memutza. Bina is the memutza between chokhmah and tevuna, which is why Bina contains within herself the potential towards Tevunah already, and Tevunah contains within herself the irreducible light of Bina, which has the ability of drawing down the pchinas of pnimius Bina, which is referred to as the iyun, which is la'amoid al davar, which is the Bina of the Bina. And Tevunah becomes the in-between that allows it to draw down into Tevunah itself. V'dai l'mevin. Now, Rav Hillel Parcher explains very clearly what Tevunah is. Tevunah looks as follows. Zok the Heiliger Rav Hillel Parcher. Aval acha hefresh ben Yisrael Saba v'Tevunah. Aval b'chinas Tevunah, what's the element of Tevunah? Hu be'etzem koyach chadash hu ma shekli hamoyach hagashmi kolet be'atzmo ha'hasada v'hahaskala b'chinas pnimius ad shekli hamoyach hagashmi yagvil lahaskala v'hasaga haruchani. The secret of Tevunah is in its essence a new strength of the mind that exists within the mind itself, the physical brain, that has the ability of processing and receiving the information itself to a degree of grasp and understanding in its interiority, to the point that the physical mind itself has the ability to contain and constrict and hold this hasaga, which is in its truth spiritual. This is the element of Tevunah in its essence. And as a result of this, and this is where the midos of bina emerge. Because when a person has a true and deep grasp of the idea, then a person has the ability of applying it in various ways. To teach more about it, or to apply some wisdom based on it. But if I haven't gone through the process of the Tevunah and my mind hasn't properly grasped it, it's a clear sign that a person has not yet descended into the depth of the matter, and as a result, they don't have the ability of transforming it and bringing it from one place to another. And he continues, and Rafil Parcher continues to explain the secret of the Daled De'echad, the Machshava of the Seichel, the beginning of the Osios of the mind. But for our purposes today, the Tevunah is going to represent the next shlav along the lens of hisbonenus, where we're now drawing it down into midos. And what's amazing is that in the Mitteler Rebbe is setting us up for the process of contemplation. He's also giving us a profound insight into the very nature of the Seder Ishtalshalos, because everything that's taking place within the self and the descent from Keser into Chochmah, into Bina, and all of the emergence of those inner qualities, ultimately, when it comes to Malchus, the Tevunah, the Daled De'echad is the secret of drawing the Seder Ishtalshalos from the place of unity into the place of disunity, which is the Partzufim of Zer Anpin and Malchus. And what we're going to see is that ultimately the goal is to draw the Moichin down into Zer Anpin and Malchus, because the purpose of hisbonenus is not to remain in the transcendental ideals, but rather to descend down from the transcendent into the immanent, and to reveal the ideals of transcendence into the reality of immanency, which is only done when the mind allows itself to let the thought actually be niklat, actually become something real that I can live my life in accordance to. And that's the secret of Malchus the Tevunah. That's the oisios of a machshava. It's not yet oisios b'chsav, but it's also not yet pure. It's no longer just pure thought. It's the emergence of the osios of thought, where I'm beginning to actually give language to how I would like to see this idea move forward. And Be'ezras Hashem will continue for the next few shirim to go over the final setups that the Mitteler Rebbe is going to give us in terms of the koyach of hisbonenus and how we do it properly with the Malchus of Tevunah. And then ultimately entering into the Seder Ishtalshalos, which will show us how the process of thinking and the process of Hashem's creation of the world are ultimately mamish reflective of one another. Be'ezras Hashem.